Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will, while I am waiting, yielded and still. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. Whiter than snow, Lord, wash me just now, as in thy presence humbly I bow. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Wounded and weary, help me, I pray. Power, all power, surely is thine. Touch me and heal me, Savior divine. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being absolute sway. Fill with thy Spirit till all shall see Christ only always living in me. As she said in a prayer meeting service early in the century, actually the early last century, Adelaide Pollard was so depressed that she could hardly concentrate on what was being said. She had felt a heavy burden on her heart for the continent of Africa, and she was convinced that God wanted her to go as a missionary. She had been on the verge of preparing to sail, but now it was evident that the necessary funds could not be raised, and her plans had to be canceled. Into her dark mood, a few words filtered. It was part of the prayer of an old lady she knew. It's all right, Lord. It doesn't matter what you bring into our lives. Just have your own way with us. Suddenly she found that her burden had lifted. In her own submission to the will of God, she had found peace. After returning home that evening, Miss Pollard meditated on the story of the potter found in Jeremiah 18:34. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought a work on the wheels. And the vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter. So he made it again another vessel, as seemed good to the potter to make it. The words seemed to describe the experiences of her own life. Born in Iowa in 1862, she had been well trained and for several years had taught in a girls' school. She was also a talented writer of both prose and poetry and produced many religious articles and some hymns, but her real interest was in evangelism, and soon she began a ministry of Bible teaching. Traveling widely throughout the United States, she spoke to numerous groups and churches. Throughout her early life, Adelaide Pollard had a consuming interest in foreign missions. For a time, she taught at the Missionary Training Institute in Nyack, New York, hoping that she might herself serve as a missionary. And now it seemed that God, who had been molding her life all along, had suddenly deserted her. But, she thought, perhaps my questioning of God's will show a flaw in my life, so God has decided to break me as the potter broke the defective vessel and then to mold my life again in his own pattern. The words of a poem took shape in her mind. even as her heart bowed in a new consecration. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will. While I'm waiting, yielded and still. As she continued to write, Miss Pollard acknowledged that the assertion of man's own will is the basic sin he commits before God. As unsaved men and women, we go our own way, living as we please, assuming that God has no claim on us. And even after we know Christ as Savior, the sin which creeps into our lives is also centered in the ego, self-consciousness, self-centeredness, and self-will. Sometimes we even sin while doing God's work, when we insist on doing it our own way and according to our own time schedule. Perhaps this had happened in the planning of her trip to Africa, and in the frustration that arose when her plans fell through. And so, in contrition, she wrote again, "Search me, and try me, Master, today. Whiter than snow, Lord, wash me just now, and have in thy presence, as in thy presence humbly I bow." The life of selfishness which God desires is expressed in Paul's words, "I have been crucified with Christ, and I myself no longer live, but Christ lives in me." Let's read that from God's Word. Galatians 2:20. I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. These words are the basic of the hymn's final stanza. In God's own time, he allowed Adelaide Pollard to minister to Africa. She also spent several years in England during the First World War, and then returned to her traveling ministry in America. She continued to speak publicly until she was 72 years of age, when on her way to yet another engagement, she was taken ill in a railroad station in New York City. Soon after, she died. So ended the remarkable life of a frail little woman who was so modest that her hymns were signed only by her initials. She had learned that God uses the person who will sincerely pray, "Have thine own way, Lord."